Welcome to the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness February General Membership Meeting. We have the agenda up here for you all. You can see we've got guests from the Seattle Housing Authority to talk about the Family Unification Program and the Foster Youth to Independence vouchers, so that's pretty exciting. We are going to, dive in again around where we're at with the bills for HEN and ABD, amongst other things, for the legislative session. We've got some important information to share around the public health emergency ending. And then, as always, we're going to have some announcements from us, and we'd love to hear from you all if you have anything that you'd like to share, or just take some time to chat with each other. Doesn't have to be anything official, so we should have time at the end for all of those things. We are recording, so we will have this up on our website after the fact, probably next week sometime. If closed captioning is something that's helpful for you, you should be able to go down on the bottom of your Zoom screen and see your icons down there and hit live transcript or closed captioning. You should have the ability to change your name. We love to see names. We love to see pronouns. We love to see how you are affiliated with the coalition or any other organizations. And we love seeing folks on camera, but we understand that that is sometimes not what is going to happen at 9 a.m. So you can avoid being captured in the recording by just staying on mute, throw things into the chat. We're very good about monitoring that, following it, and checking it out. So thanks for being here. I do like to just mention that if we have anybody from the media, welcome. We love having you. We love having you as part of our community. We do ask that you only quote and take information from coalition staff members or our official presenters. And we are always open for follow-up if you're needing to get in touch with other agencies and make the right connection there for you. Is there anybody that would be willing to read our mission, vision, and values? And thank you, Terry. I appreciate you introducing yourself in the chat. I forgot to mention it. Yes, please introduce yourselves in the chat to each other. And then if there's anyone that would like to read our mission, vision, and values, that would be lovely.
We mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. That is the mission. The vision, a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone has a home. And values are equity, justice, collective action.
Thank you, Karina. Appreciate that. So we are going to jump in with our Seattle Housing Authority colleagues here to talk about two programs and really share information about who's eligible, how to apply for these, how the process is for the Family Unification and the Foster Youth to Independence. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Birkebak, and I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing your last name. So Sarah, welcome. Thank you. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Jody, and you nailed it. Hi, folks. Sarah Birkebak. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you so much for having me in this space. I'm here on behalf of Seattle Housing Authority and also a little bit King County Housing Authority, just to share about some of the voucher programs that currently have capacity in our community, just to make sure that you all have that information and can share it with the folks that you're serving. And I think I'm able to share my screen. Is that right, Jody?
You should be able to. I made you a co-host, but let us know if you're struggling.
Perfect. Is everyone able to see the slides?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. So I'm going to be talking specifically about two of the voucher programs that both Seattle Housing Authority and King County Housing Authority have. Our Foster Youth to Independence voucher program and our Family Unification program. We administer both these programs in partnership with Department of Children, Youth, and Families, DCYF. And these programs serve specific populations. DCYF works with us to certify that families and youth are eligible for these programs. And then those folks can fill out an application to receive a voucher with the housing authorities. So there's kind of two layers of eligibility for the program as a whole to make sure they meet the program requirements, and then also the eligibility that we at the housing authority verify to make sure folks are eligible to get assistance through our housing choice voucher programs. I'll talk a little bit more about what those look like. But wanted to highlight our Foster Youth to Independence program. SHA and KCHA got a total of about 150 of these vouchers at the end of 2021. And this program is specifically designed to serve youth who are exiting out of the foster care system. So youth who are eligible will be between 18 years old and their 25th birthday, and will have been in foster care, even if it's just for a day, between their 16th and 18th birthday, or will be leaving foster care within the next 90 days and are at risk of homelessness or currently experiencing homelessness. These vouchers for our youth are term limited, so youth can receive up to 3 years of subsidized rental assistance through the voucher program. That can be extended up to 5 years if youth are participating in the Housing Authority's family self-sufficiency programs. So at Seattle Housing Authority, that's our Job Link program, where youth can work with dedicated coaches on getting connected to education, employment, training resources. Youth are also able to receive case management support through our partners at the YMCA. And one thing to note for the Foster Youth to Independence vouchers is that if a youth is enrolled in extended foster care and want to pursue this voucher program, they would need to be willing to exit EFC 90 days after signing a lease with their voucher. And both these programs are our standard housing choice voucher programs. So youth would receive a voucher, they can use that to then shop in the rental market to find a place to rent. There's supports in place both at the Housing Authority to help with housing search, as well as with our partners at the YMCA. They have some dedicated navigators as well to help youth who are searching. We do have some assistance to help cover application fees and security deposits for youth while they're searching and in the process of leasing up. And we do have a couple of different ways that youth can get connected with the Foster Youth to Independence program. If they are already connected with a social worker at DCYF, they can get referred that way. If they currently are connected with one of you all as service providers, you can work with them to help them submit a self-referral. I can share this PowerPoint out with Jody so that this link and all this information can go out to you all. But there's a simple self-referral form that youth can fill out directly that you can assist a youth with filling out. There is a release of information component to the form, so please be sure that the youth is at least present or working with you if you're helping them to fill this form out. And then that information goes over to the YMCA, who will submit that information to DCYF to confirm that the youth is going to be eligible for the program. And then as soon as we get that certified, the folks at the YMCA will be connected with, they'll get connected with their voucher specialist so that they can start the application process. Their voucher specialist can also help get any necessary documents they might need, like if they need to get a copy of their photo ID or social security card, things like that. They can assist with that process. And then once we get the housing authorities get that completed application, we'll go through all the information, make sure we have everything we need to go ahead and issue that youth their voucher. Youth have 120 days, so about 4 months to shop for a place. We can provide extensions for youth who may need a little bit more time while they are out there shopping. Also wanted to highlight briefly our family unification program. This serves both families and youth, but I'll primarily highlight the family portion. I know both Seattle and King County Housing Authority have some capacity for these vouchers as well. And so the family unification program serves families who need stable housing in order to be reunified with their children if their child or children have been placed in out-of-home care, or if the lack of stable housing is delaying a child being released to their custody after being in out-of-home care. There's not an option for self-referral or direct agency referrals here. These referrals do come through DCYF as they identify families who may be eligible. But I did put an asterisk here. There is, if you are working with families that you believe would meet these criteria, I'm going to share my contact information and the contact info for my counterpart at King County Housing Authority. If you just wanted to reach out to us, we can connect you with folks at DCYF to explore if they would be eligible to get certified and get connected with this voucher resource. So I've got our contact information here. And again, I will share this PowerPoint out along with a flyer that we worked with a group of youth ambassadors to design and develop with some more information about the Foster Youth Independence Program that we would love your help getting out into the community, sharing with folks that you're working with and serving. And I did add, I know there was a request when we were getting the invite to get on this agenda to share some more information about the Orca Card bus passes that Seattle Housing Authority is offering to residents of our public housing programs. So I did add a link there. There's really clear information on our website about how our residents can register. There's both in-person events, online registration, a couple different options folks can pursue there. But wanted to see if anyone had any questions for me about either of those programs.
Oh, Sarah, thank you. This is really great. And I appreciate you sharing out the slides with us and the flyer. And we do have a question in the chat. So it says, does the child need to be in foster care? Would staying with grandma qualify the parent or mom for a voucher?
If they were in foster care at some point, so in out-of-home care at some point, they would likely be eligible. They don't have to currently be in foster care or out-of-home care. But that one would definitely be, I would say, worth going ahead, having them submit that self-referral form. And then the folks at DCYF can, double check and ensure that they would meet those eligibility requirements. I know our partners at the YMCA have been really wonderful too. If folks are not eligible for whatever reason, connecting them to other resources that they may be eligible for based on their circumstances.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions? We do have time. Oh, we've got a request to share contact information in the chat if you are so willing and able. Thank you, Monica and Karina, for those questions. There we go.
Yeah, Sarah, can I ask you a follow-up question, which is, I think maybe what the other question might have been getting at for the family unification program voucher. If the child is out of the home, basically related to homelessness, so staying with grandma, staying with another, but it's keeping the family apart, is that something that could be a family unification voucher referral?
It may be. Generally, the family unification is going to be working with folks who have been involved with CPS or the court system for that removal of the child from the home at some point. And so if it is more of like an informal arrangement, they may not be eligible. But definitely send me an email and I can connect you with our partners at DCYF just to verify and confirm.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so
I'm
much,
muted, yeah.
everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate you being here. You are obviously very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and we also understand if you have to go. So we will look for those slides coming towards us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Have a great day. All right, we are going to move on to our legislative session. So I'm going to pass it to my beloved and wonderful colleagues, Sarah Robbins and Alison Eisinger. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah Robbins. I am the policy manager here at the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness, and I am going to give you a few legislative updates, a little bit about where we are in the legislative process, and then Alison will also give a few updates, both at for the state level and also a couple of King County updates. So where we are in the legislative process at this point. So the legislative session started a little over a month ago, the beginning of January. And we are at a point of, there are different stages of the session, different cutoffs and timeframes where certain things have to happen. And tomorrow is the date for what they call policy cutoff. So any bills that have been introduced into a policy committee have to be voted out of that committee by tomorrow, or the bill is, with some very small exceptions, the bill is dead for this legislative session. So this is a extremely important week, a busy week for lawmakers and those that are in Olympia, trying to make sure that bills that we care about are out of those policy committees, and either if a bill is going to cost money, if it has a fiscal note attached to it, it goes to a fiscal committee. If there is no cost to the policy bill, it goes to a rules committee. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of the bills that we have been tracking closely here at the coalition. So the first bill is House Bill 1260, and this is a bill related to the Aged, Blind, or Disabled program, or ABD program. And this bill will eliminate the requirement that people who have been on ABD, if they are approved for Social Security, that they have to pay those benefits back out of their Social Security back payment. This actually was legislation that was requested by the department. So the Department of Social and Health Services that administers the ABD program put this policy idea forth as legislation, which is fantastic. I mean, this is, and it has been voted out of its policy committee. So this bill is alive, it's moving. It was heard in the Appropriations Committee yesterday, which is the fiscal or financial committee of the House. So the House Financial Committee is Appropriations, and the Senate Fiscal Committee is called Ways and Means. So it had a hearing in Appropriations yesterday. The next step in that process is that it will need to be scheduled for an executive session, and this is where the committee actually votes on whether to move the bill out of appropriations, move the bill out of appropriations potentially with changes, and those changes would, could affect the cost of the bill, or they don't vote it out of appropriations. Those are sort of all the next steps. So we have a take action on this right now. If one of my colleagues could drop that link into the chat, and this is a very easy click on it, put in your personal information. Important to use your your home information, because that will make sure that it gets to your lawmakers that represent you where you live. Also, many of us can only do this on our personal time as opposed to our work time, depending on what our job is. And this, some of you, if you click on it, it might be that you're not eligible. This one is specifically directed to members of the Appropriations Committee. So if your lawmaker is on the Appropriations Committee, it will send the message. If your member is not, this particular action won't let you send it. But we will definitely have more actions next week that everyone can do. This was just, it was really important to target the message to the Appropriations Committee. And so we did a narrow action. Another bill that we are tracking and advocating for is one related to housing and essential needs, the HEN program. And this is Senate Bill 5480. This bill has also been voted out of its policy committee and has moved over to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. This bill would ensure that anyone that is enrolled in HEN gets at least a minimum of 12 months of rental assistance. It would make the time frame start when the first payment is made, not based on someone's eligibility through DSHS. It would allow for better data sharing between the Department of Commerce, DSHS, and HEN providers. This stuff sounds super technical and super wonky, but the reality is that on the ground, these things make a huge difference. When the state public health emergency was starting to wind down over the last few months, one of the things that ended as part of that was the waiver for HEN. So during the pandemic, folks were not terminated from Housing and Essential Needs program to ensure that people, that housing was stable. And when that started to wind down, we found ourselves in a position where the Department of Commerce and DSHS could not share the pertinent information with each other and with the HEN providers to be able to notify clients in an effective way that this waiver was coming to an end. And as someone who was kind of in the middle of it as an advocate, wanting to make sure that everyone had adequate notice to get to DSHS, recertify your benefits, to make sure you're not losing housing, this was one of those just bureaucratic frustrations that we are now trying to fix through legislation. Alison, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I really, really appreciate your explaining that. We've talked about the fact that sometimes bills sound like they are boring and technical. You know, nobody gets super excited when they hear this legislation is going to make an important administrative correction to something. And I see that Justin just joined us. So I want to just note for everyone that this was a heartbreaking situation that we heard about from folks who were case managers for people on the HEN program, because they knew that people didn't know what was coming. And they wanted desperately to get in touch with people so that they had enough time to figure out their next steps. So one of the reasons that I'm jumping in here is to ask whether or not we've got anyone who lives or works in Kent or Auburn on the call. This is because that is the 47th legislative district. And the 47th legislative district is represented in the legislature by State Senator Claudia Kaufman, who is the sponsor of this legislation. And one of the things that we can do as advocates is sometimes let sponsors know that even if their bill seems like it's dry and technical, we get it. And we appreciate their paying attention to how important it is to get things right, because it has real implications for hundreds and thousands of real people's lives. So if you are if you live in Kent or Auburn, if you provide services to people who are receiving housing and essential needs benefits, why don't you put a little indicator in the chat, and we might ask you to just send a quick, simple note to Senator Claudia Kaufman to show her some appreciation, frankly. That's it.
Yeah, and I will also, we are doing, I'll put in a little plug for we are doing a legislative learning on HEN and ABD on Tuesday. We will drop the registration link for that in the chat, and we will be creating a little take action message to Senator Kaufman, just showing our appreciation for her support of this bill that seems very technical and boring, but will actually have a big impact on folks receiving housing and essential needs benefits. The last bill I am going to give a quick update on is House Bill 1174. And this is a bill that we are supporting with our colleagues that are part of the voter, oh my gosh, the Voting Restoration Coalition. Sorry, my brain totally, and Civil Survival. And this bill would eliminate barriers that are currently in place around folks in jail having access to voting. So they do have the ability to vote, but there are many administrative barriers to getting ballots, having a private space to fill out your ballot, turning your ballot back in, getting timely information about what is on the ballot, and those kinds of education materials. So this bill would work with the jails and the Secretary of State to make it easier for folks in jails to be able to vote. And the good news is that this bill has also made it out of its policy committee. and has been referred to the House Appropriations Committee. So another one we are tracking, and if if it has any actions attached to it from our friends at Civil Survival, we will share those out in our messaging. And I'm going to turn it over to Alison to talk about Working Families Tax Credit and some King County things. And Jody.
Thanks. Just before we transition, I just wanted to tell folks related to the jail bill that Sarah was just talking about. Civil Survival is doing a Transform Justice Day of Action on Monday, February 20th. So I'm going to drop the link so you can learn a little bit more about that, just to stay up to date and see how and if you might be able to participate. That was it. Thank you.
Thanks. And because I think we have some time, I want to just pause for those who might have a question or want to hear a little bit more from Sarah about the Tuesday HEN and ABD listening session that we're hosting, before I take us in the direction of some other very exciting and important bills and actions that we're going to invite you to take this morning around rent fairness, around the Working Families Tax Credit and getting cash back into the hands of people who are working and low income, and about some things that are coming up that we'll need to take action about in King County. But before we shift gears, Sarah has put together a really exciting opportunity that includes a chance to hear directly from one of the lawmakers who is working really hard on a bill related to the ABD program. So I think this might be a good time, Sarah, if you could just tell people a little more about why they want to register.
Yeah, we will talk in depth about the HEN bill, the ABD bill, and also around HEN investments in when we get to the budget part of the legislative session. And then we will hear from Representative Emily Alvarado, who is the sponsor of the ABD bill. She will join us to talk about, this is her, she's a freshman representative. This is her first year in the House, and we'll talk to her about why sponsoring a public benefits, specifically an ABD bill, is important to her, and she's really she's really championing this, putting a lot of time and effort into it, and we want to talk to her about why that is and why these safety net programs through DSHS are so important to her, and have that discussion with her. So I think it will be a good session. It's Tuesday, 2:00. It's an hour, and we will hopefully also be able to record it and post it. But hope any of you can join us.
And I'll give people a little reminder in case you think the name Emily Alvarado is familiar, but you're not sure why. That's because Emily Alvarado was the director of the City of Seattle Office of Housing. And before that, she worked for the Housing Development Consortium in Snohomish County. She has been a partner, an advocate, and a good government bureaucrat for a long time on affordable housing and housing justice issues. And I honestly think that part of why she understands the HEN and ABD programs and the need for the people who rely on those programs to get their needs better met through those programs is in part because of the work that many of you all helped us do to create the Home for Good program at the City of Seattle, which was administered at the Office of Housing. And that was and is a rent subsidy at the local level to make sure that people don't lose their housing when they transition from getting state level public disability benefits to finally being approved for federal Social Security disability benefits. So there's a lot of connections here. And Emily is a very approachable person. So it's also a great opportunity to join us Tuesday to, talk to a real person who really gets it, but who also really needs to hear from you all in order to be her most effective self in Olympia. And I think it's a great opportunity. I'm so excited that Sarah got Emily to coordinate her schedule with us so that we can make that connection happen, because it's one of the things that's easier via Zoom than if we all had to traipse down to Olympia to meet with Representative Alvarado in her teeny tiny office. I think there is a question about the link that I dropped in the chat. So maybe one of my colleagues could figure out whether or not the registration link I put in is working or not. And with that, I will talk about a couple of other things. As you heard from Sarah, we're at a really interesting point in the state legislative session, which is that bills need to keep moving. You might remember, if you, like me, loved the Schoolhouse Rock cartoons, the I'm Just a Bill, I'm Sitting Here on Capitol Hill, those little cartoons are probably like the strongest reminder that most of us have had about what a legislative process looks like. Those were, of course, about the federal legislative process in the US Capitol in Washington, DC, but here in what sometimes is called the other Washington, in our state capitol in Olympia, there's a parallel process. And what I have learned over the years is that one of the things that we have to remind ourselves about is that process means that as good advocates, we have to speak up over and over and over throughout the process to keep good bills and policies and budget priorities alive. The state legislative session is intense, is long. There are thousands of bills that get proposed, but hundreds of bills die along the way. And our job is to keep taking action. So you might hear from us or from another organization like the Statewide Poverty Action Network, the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, the Children's Alliance, many organizations that are working hard on really important priorities. And you might think, oh, I already took action on the dental therapy bill. Oh, didn't I already do something about the rent fairness bill? And the answer is yes, you might have, and you need to keep taking action. That's because the lawmakers also need to be able to gauge as they go through the process what matters to their constituents. So no matter where you live, even if you think, oh, my state lawmakers already are housing advocates, or my state lawmakers are sponsoring some of the bills I care about, you still need to speak up. That really is part of our collective responsibility as we go through. So that's just a little friendly PSA about the process. And remember, one of the things that will probably start to happen in about a month or so is that lawmakers will be holding town halls, some of them in person, some of them virtual, or maybe hybrid. And we're going to invite you to show up to the town halls and ask some questions about some of the priorities that we want to make sure are still on their radar. Jody, I see your hand.
Yeah, you triggered a question for me that I think about often when I see action alerts come through my inbox, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
Because I very much understand that I need to speak up along the process. Like our bill, we're advocating for it, we've moved it along, we got to speak up again and keep that momentum going. Sometimes, often, I'm not tracking whether I'm taking action on a bill at the same point in the process that I've already taken action on. And I'm always a little like, should I just do it again? Is that hurtful? Does it matter? I don't know. I'm going to play it. I'm going to do it again because I can't track it. So I'm just curious if you have thoughts on that.
A great question. A great question. I'm in the same boat, especially because some of our major priorities, like funding for the Washington State Housing Trust Fund are a priority for many different organizations, and I'm on multiple different organizations' email lists. So I think you said the key. There is nothing wrong with taking action again. If in doubt, fill it out. Okay, I really just made that up. But seriously, but you're giving me the opportunity to say one of my other favorite advocacy tips. Personalize your message, because that's another way to make it clear to the readers on the other end, whether it's the lawmaker herself or himself or their legislative aide, there's a real person taking a second to put some thought into this. So if the template allows, customize the subject line, put in the first sentence or two, you know, I live in your district, I'm a registered voter, and I work with people who need homes every day. And then you can just let the rest of it be the canned message, because it tells them something about a real person taking action that way. And I really appreciate your asking that question. Anybody else with a similar question, put it in the chat. I'm going to keep going on some other priorities, but this is what we're here for, right? Because, you know, it's hard to overstate the value of taking action. Years ago, when I started at the coalition, I started taking action a lot more often than I had previously. And I learned the lesson that Nancy Amadei has taught many of us, that you have to personalize your message. And I did that. And my state senator noticed it. And when I had a chance to meet my state senator in person, and I introduced myself and we shook hands because it was way before COVID, he looked at me and said, "Ah, you're a frequent correspondent." And it made me realize, oh my gosh, he really knows who I am. And that will happen for you too, because your state lawmakers really need information from their constituents. So it's a very good reminder for all of us. There are real people on the other end, and they need to know that we're real people too. And the other thing I'll just note is paid lobbyists in suits are down in Olympia in person all day, 7 days a week, basically, working for interests that are not necessarily the interests of our folks. And so to counteract that, we have to be smart, we have to be consistent, we have to keep on speaking up, and we have to use the power that we have, which in the case of every single person on this call is real people, real stories, and powerful, powerful reasons why it matters to pass legislation that a lot of the paid lobbyists are not interested in or are frankly opposed to. Speaking of which, I'm going to talk about the rent fairness bill that is currently moving through the legislature. There are actually two. That's what's called a companion bill. That means there's one version in the Senate and one version in the House. This changed a little bit during COVID because basically they were trying to figure out how actually to cut down on the number of bills because it was just too much to handle. And I'm going to put the action alert right here in the link. And I think there's something wrong with how I'm copying and pasting it. So hang on one second. There we go. I think that should work. So go ahead and click on that link. That is an action alert from our colleagues at the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance. And they're asking us to take action to pass bills that stabilize rent increases and prohibit rent gouging. I suspect many of you on this call have experienced firsthand or know clients, coworkers, friends, or family who have seen rents increase $100 a month, $200 a month. Many people are experiencing a dramatic sort of resetting of rents following a period during the worst of the pandemic when rents did not increase. These bills are incredibly important opportunities for us to let lawmakers know it is still possible for landlords, whether they're mom and pop landlords or people who own an entire building, or many, many, many buildings, to cover their costs and even turn a profit without gouging the renters. And that's why this legislation is so important. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I think I'm okay on time, but somebody give me a high sign if I'm running short, is the Washington Working Families Tax Credit. Is there anybody on our general membership meeting today who was able to attend the Working Families Tax Credit workshop yesterday? I think I see Marjorie Johnson's nodding her head. I remember you were there, Marjorie, which is great. Felix, thank you, great. Was it useful? Julia, yes, thank you, great. I would love to just invite you, Julia, Felix, if you want to just come off mute for a sentence or two to let your colleagues who may not have had a chance to attend know why it was so helpful, because we are super excited about the Working Families Tax Credit, and the action I'm going to give you next is to make it even better.
What was useful is that if you already done your taxes and you didn't know about it, especially if you did your taxes before February 1st, you need to go back and reapply. And you can go and apply all the way to the end of the year. So it's not like you have a time limit, but you do have a time limit all the way to the end of the year. But if you did your taxes before February 1st, you need to do it now. You need to apply.
Great.
You need to go back and apply.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marjorie. And just to let folks know who might not know the basics of this, the Washington Working Families Tax Credit is a new cash back in people's pockets program that took 13 years of advocacy to bring around. And it launched February 1st. So Marjorie's point is really important. This is brand new. Lots of people need to know about it. 425,000 Washington households, individuals as well as families, are eligible for up to $1,200 in a tax credit. And it's based on income level and family size. There are really quick ways online to check whether you, the folks you work with, your coworkers are eligible. 425,000 people so far are eligible, and I'll ask maybe Sarah or Tim if one of you could just put the link to the Washington Working Families Tax Credit info site in the link so that people can learn about it. Our training was great, and we will put the recording up for you, but honestly, you don't necessarily need to attend the training. You can educate yourself about this benefit. Now, this benefit is super important for a couple of other reasons, one of which is undocumented immigrants, people who file their taxes using what's called an ITIN number, are also eligible. That is huge and very unusual. Also, people who have very low incomes are eligible potentially for the full benefit. So there's a lot of thought and work that went into this. And one of the reasons that we're really advocating for it to be expanded is this is one of the few tax justice measures that we can have, since folks know that our state tax system is the most upside down and unfair of all 50 states. So it's pretty important that even though we don't have a state income tax, this tax credit program is starting to help turn things in a more fair direction. The Working Families Tax Credit currently has some age limits. So the action that we're asking you to take would expand it to include anybody 18 or older. And that means that it would increase by almost 200,000 households, the number of Washington households who are eligible. That is incredibly important. Since February 1st, we heard yesterday on our training from the folks at the Poverty Action Network, almost 40,000 people have applied to get this tax credit, which is between $300 and $1,200 for most people. That's great, but we have a long way to go. So we really invite you to help make that program better and to get the word out about the fact that it exists. Okay, so one more time, you can take action right here. And I'm going to tell you another little secret, because I think this might be something on Jody's mind and other people's mind as well. What if I don't really understand what that action does? Okay, fair enough. I learned a lot about the Working Families Tax Credit yesterday in our training. I could not have told you anything that I just said to you about it before yesterday's training. But I trust the Statewide Poverty Action Network and all of the amazing coalition members that they worked with to pass this. And at a certain point, even I agree that I cannot know everything. And I just say, I am going to trust the good work of this organization. And if they're asking me to take action on something, I'm going to do it. Now, you should totally educate yourself. But the way things go fast and furious during legislative session, I think it's okay to note that it's all right not to know everything about a bill and to still take action, because that's really why we create organizations to help us be more effective, because you all are doing other important work really well. All right, quickly, Jody, do I have, I'm not keeping up with chat messages. Do I have 3 minutes to talk about King County things?
Yes, but we're
Really
a little
quick.
bit over, so real
Okay.
quick.
My apologies.
That's
my-
okay. We
Okay.
had a section for Working Families Tax Credit that I think you covered most of, and so Tim will just share a few more resources, and that should save us time. So continue
Thank you
on.
for your flexibility, team. Great. Okay, so shifting gears from Olympia, we're pulling back to our local Seattle and King County. Guess what? Things are going fast and furiously here too. As you might have heard, not that long ago, was it last week or maybe the week before, the King County Council voted unanimously to put a new behavioral health levy before the voters. That is the CCC levy, or the Crisis Care Centers levy. It's a levy that will, frankly, help make progress on backfilling over 100 crisis behavioral health beds that we've lost in King County just through the pandemic, and add additional services with a specific focus for youth and others. In 5 parts of the county, there will be a crisis care center or multiple sites in North, East, South, as well as in Seattle, and a youth-specific crisis care center. These are not involuntary sites. These are places that folks can walk into and say, I am really in a bad way and I need to talk to somebody, or I need some help. You could also potentially bring someone from a shelter or a supportive housing site where you're working with their consent to this site to get some intensive support. This is something we don't currently have, except in the Crisis Solutions Center that DESC is currently operating, and this would really expand it. That election is another special election. We just had one in Seattle on Valentine's Day for the I-135 Social Housing Initiative, which looks like it is passing, but we're about to have another special election on Tuesday, April 25th. And 1 week after that is when the King County Council is going to vote to send the renewal of the King County Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy to the ballot. We have to pass the CCC levy, and we have to renew the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy. And in the next few weeks, we're going to be calling on all of you who live or work in King County to help us tell the King County Council that we are going to need the Vet Seniors and Human Services levy to be bigger than what the executive is transmitting. We haven't seen all the details yet. We'll see them in a few days. We think there's some good content there, but we know it's not going to be big enough. And so I'm just giving you all a heads up that you'll be hearing from us, even as the Olympia advocacy is still happening, about things that we're going to invite you to do, emails and showing up for public comment in King County. That's it. Thank you all so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. All right. We're doing okay on time. I think our next couple sessions we can, be brief and concise, but I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk a little bit about some of the implications for providers and advocates with the unwinding of the public health emergency. So Sarah, take it away.
Hi again. I am going to focus on two very specific pieces of benefits that will be affected by the start of the public health emergency unwinding. There are actually many different public health emergencies, state, local, federal, even at the federal level. They're all affected a little bit differently by different pieces of legislation. It's all really confusing. But there are two things that are happening to the clients that you work with in the, sort of immediate now that everyone should be aware of. The first is around SNAP, EBT food benefits. During the pandemic, there was a emergency allotment added to everyone's food benefits, meaning that everyone's food benefits were increased throughout the pandemic. The amount varies based on household size, but the intent behind it was we want people to stay home and we want people to go to the grocery store less. We are going to increase the amount of food benefits that we are giving households. And that particular increase in benefits is ending this month. So this is the last month that folks will receive that, that increased amount. So starting in March, people are going to get the amount of food benefits plus or minus a little bit because there has been some shifts in what the benefit amounts look like at the state level. But their benefits are going to go down in March, and DSHS has sent out information to all households and individuals that will be affected by this. They sent out like a color trifold flyer to all households. They've been trying to communicate this out, but I think we all know that people that receive DSHS benefits get a lot of information from DSHS and don't always read everything carefully or read it at all. And so we really want to make sure that people know, especially with, we know it's difficult to get through to DSHS right now, both on the phone and in the lobbies. And because this is a mass change, there's nothing that can be done about it. It's going to happen. There are no hearing rights attached to this. This is a change that's going to affect everyone. So as much as you can let people know that, and people are prepared for this change, I think is very helpful. The other benefit that will be affected starting in April is Medicaid benefits. So Medicaid or Apple Health benefits. during the pandemic, the federal government put a waiver in place for continuous enrollment. This meant that anyone on Medicaid or Apple Health benefits did not have to do regular certifications to keep their health benefit coverage. That continuous enrollment is ending in April. Does not mean that everyone's benefits are going to end in April. What it means is that as your recertification date, whatever someone's regular annual recertification date comes up, but starting in April, folks are going to have to recertify, and people haven't done this for a couple of years. And if that's not done, or the healthcare authority does not get the correct information to determine whether someone is still eligible, people are going to lose medical benefits. This is happening nationwide. There are, some pretty scary numbers out there around the number of individuals that will potentially lose benefits, not because they're not eligible, but because the state does not have all of the information that they need to make an eligibility determination. So I think letting clients know that to be aware if they're getting mail from the healthcare authority, that they need to open it and read it and ask for help if they need it. And so that we can ensure that people don't lose their medical health insurance. So those are the two. There are many other things that we don't fully know the answers to. I think if one of my colleagues, Alison, shared an interesting article with our team around sort of the broader implications of the unwinding of the public health emergency that I found very interesting, just for my own information around what's going to happen with COVID testing, what's going to happen with the at-home tests that a lot of us order through the government and don't pay for, insurance companies paying for COVID testing. If anyone's interested in reading it, we'll drop that into the chat. I found it interesting. And happy to answer any questions that folks have about either the SNAP or Medicaid benefits. Okay.
It's really hard to hear about those benefits ending.
Yep. We know that we know that food assistance benefits aren't actually enough usually to make it through the month, and that additional allotment made it a lot better. And the reduction is based on individual household size, so it will vary. It will vary based on household size. And I know we do have someone from DSHS on the line. I don't want to put her on the spot, but if you feel like you can give a range of what that might be, that would be helpful.
So I know that the extra benefits that have been issued during COVID are cutting, and so that will impact a lot of the clients we serve, and we understand that that was one of the things they put in place during COVID. And then I know I was just actually typing in the chat, a lot of our lobbies are very short-staffed, which I know a lot of agencies are. To give a time frame, it takes about 9 to 12 months to train our public benefits specialists, which are the folks who are frontline doing interviews for all financial benefits, which is a bit of why when customers are coming into their local offices, they're having to sit for a while, as well as on the phones. So we are trying to do what we can to mitigate that in terms of offering clients to get services both on phones, also on internet, in terms of submitting their mid-certification reviews and their annual reviews. So it's really unfortunate that we're kind of hit with this staffing issue right as we're coming out of COVID, and a lot of these things are changing in terms of particularly the financial side of the benefit. And a lot of, just to put it out there, we have a bit of a backup from paperwork that clients have been submitting on behalf of their applications. So we're trying to really work through those a lot. Last month, we closed some of our offices for one day, which we did see a lot of positive outcome of that. We were able to process a lot of applications. So if you're seeing delays in processing of applications, that's most likely why is we're a bit behind. So we're trying to work as quickly as we can. We're recruiting folks for positions as our public benefit specialists, but because it does take such a long time to train folks, we're really just trying to play catch up at this point. So same thing for our contact center. We're trying to get folks staffed up there as well. So we appreciate folks' patience. I know it's very frustrating to go into an office and sit for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on the office. So if there's any advocacy efforts that when you guys are talking to legislatures or community partners that have impacts on being able to help bolster recruitment efforts for state employees, that's something we've been really trying to focus on too, just because we're not finding folks who are wanting the jobs, and the training does take such a long time. So that's kind of the things we've been up against lately.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And we are at the coalition working with DSHS leadership around supporting technology infrastructure that is desperately needed, that will have huge impacts on that kind of stuff. And the other piece that we feel really strongly about is what can the department or the legislature do to eliminate some of the unnecessary paperwork or certifications or those types of things that can really just bring the workload down and also make it easier for clients to access and maintain benefits.
Yeah, and those are some of the things that our leadership has been working on and trying to, I know we've trialed getting rid of the mid-certification reviews during COVID, and then those have recently come back. The biggest thing that we've been coming up against is not being able to reach either people's employers or housing to verify some of that information. So the more information that customers can come prepared with, whether that be wage stubs, letters from employers when their employment ends, making sure that we have a good mailing address or contact information for the clients. I know with a lot of our homeless population, folks are moving around a lot, may not be accessing their mail. So if agencies can provide either a contact person, or if clients have an alternate mailing address, so that we can, and we do offer that when we're interviewing folks, is if there's someone who can receive mail or that they would like assistance with their application on, we can certainly work with community partners to get the information we need more timely. It's just a lot of folks have fallen off the radar, unfortunately, with moving around, both during COVID and now coming out of COVID housing wise. So that's a big barrier that we've come up against. But there are processes in place trying to figure out how we can better streamline both our technology and also using the applications that we're accessing to gather some of this information regarding employment history, resources, income, that sort of thing.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that perspective. I am going to turn things over to Jody or Tim, not sure which, to talk about the next set of our closing agenda.
Yeah, so we have just a few staff announcements, and we'll keep them kind of brief, just so if there's anything you all are hoping to share, we can leave a little time for that. But first up, we have a little bit of updated information regarding the homeless service provider stipends. So this program is still going. If you have not yet applied for your first stipend or stipend number 1, you should still apply to see if you are eligible. The last day to submit an application is June 2nd. And there has been some confusing, sort of language previously around this. So if you have not yet applied for that first stipend of up to $2,000, you can submit that application up to and on June 2nd of this year. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat so you all have it there. And then if there's further questions and things related to the stipends, reach out to us because we want to hear if you've received it, how that's going for you. If you've struggled with anything, we want to hear that as well. We are tracking all that. So, but just so folks know, there is a deadline of June 2nd to apply for that first stipend. And then with all this talk of, sort of coming out of the pandemic and, changes to benefits and different programs, and, we've seen locally policies and mandates around masks and vaccines changing, we're shifting again when it comes to COVID and how we show up for each other, with each other, and to share information. And so as part of that, the coalition is looking to just do a little temperature check around where you all are in terms of what it might look like to do a hybrid coalition general membership meeting, maybe like late spring, early summer. We've had an offer from a member organization to use a space that has the tech support to do hybrid and to do it well. There's a lot that we gained by being able to come virtually, right? We've seen our attendance increase dramatically in some of our meetings, and we lose that ability to meet each other and to share all that information and to have coffee together and eat together, because the coalition likes to feed folks when we get together, and we like to take action and share good information. And so we are looking at what that could look like. So we have a little poll. This is just a temperature check. My colleague Tim is going to launch it here. And I'm not seeing it yet. As I said,
let me try to relaunch it.
Thank you. While Tim is launching that, the other thing we would love to hear, okay, Karina got it, great, is if you've had experience with a hybrid meeting that worked well or didn't, so we can learn from others' mistakes or successes. So we'll work on getting that launched. Anybody else seeing that? I'm not seeing it yet either.
Can anyone raise their hand or say in the chat if they see this poll?
Okay.
On my view, okay, you see it, Sarah?
Okay.
Okay.
Folks seem
Perfect.
to be
Thank you so
getting it. Okay. Wonderful. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I'm going to hand it over to Tim. We talked a lot about the working families tax credit, but there's just a little bit more information that we want to share. So Tim, take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much. So feel free to take that poll and kind of just think about that while we talk about some awesome resources that we shared yesterday. Alison gave a really good kind of feel of the significance of the Working Families Tax Credit. It is a tax credit open to many Washingtonians, families and individuals of low and moderate income. It's available to people who have ITINs, people who potentially are undocumented or non-residents. It is available to people in ways that won't impact their other benefits because it's a tax credit. It's not a benefit like TANF or another type of cash assistance available. So that's a really big deal. I am going to share the YouTube recording. We recorded on YouTube, so you can check out what one of the biggest champions of that tax credit, Marcy Bowers from the Statewide Poverty Action Network, as well as our good friend Hannah Rosenberger over at Solid Ground. They shared some great FAQs, walked folks through the application and shared eligibility on the tax credit. There will be a blog coming soon, and that will be available on our website, homelessinfo.org. If you register for the training, you'll get a follow-up. We may share it in a just a message to members as well. Yeah, that one additional thing that I wanted to share that's important to remember that I think we referenced also is just that a person has to file taxes in order to be eligible for the Working Families Tax Credit. I'm going to share two resources in the chat that can be helpful if a person is e-filing, filing online, or needing assistance to file taxes with a person. We have great tax prep help coming from United Way of King County. So I'm going to share that as well. And then I would love to, I'm so sorry, that was a different link. I have a lot of links to work with here. This is a link to find tax help from United Way of King County. There's also some awesome resources that you can share with your neighbors, with your family members, with your clients, just about the program to encourage people to apply. I'm going to share, again, a link that can get folks to the Working Families Tax Credit website to look at some printable handouts. And yeah, it's an awesome program. It's an awesome benefit. Share it with your neighbors, let people know, and check out our website for more information. I would also just like to pivot to another training that we're offering on March 29th on essentially accessing long-term care if you are a person experiencing homelessness. We have some people from the Northwest Justice Project talking about essentially a trend of long-term care facilities not keeping people who have previously experienced homelessness in facilities, which is a violation of their rights. So we want to share in this training what a person's rights are to accessing long-term care through assisted living facilities, family homes, or nursing homes. I'm going to post the link to register for that training in the chat right now. And folks have quite a bit of time to register for that. We hope to see you register. I'm going to check back in with the poll. Did the poll not launch?
No, I think it did, but we can kind of figure that out, I think, after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah, so as Tim mentioned, we've got the long-term care training end of March. We've got a link in there to register. And this is really, yeah, understanding folks that have been placed in long-term care facilities at some point. So as Tim mentioned, you know, adult family home, you know, skilled nursing facility, and have been, you know, kind of evicted, asked to leave, removed, discharged, and you might end up seeing them in your services, and it's the rights that these folks have had when they have been placed and are you know, inappropriately or illegally discharged, and their rights are being violated, to learn about that. So really, really interesting information to come.